I'm always I'm always unsure about how much one can actually learn from interviews beyond people's resumes plus references. And so I think if you have great references and a great resume, that's probably all you need. And then there are people who interview well and badly, and the interviews are often misleading in one form or another. My co-founder at PayPal, Max Levchin, had this thing called the Aura test, where it was your first 30-second impression was very important. And he thought that there were all these sort of somewhat bad people who were nevertheless good at and glib at selling themselves. And so the first impression was actually much better than the 10 or 15-minute impression when they would have sort of fooled you into thinking they were a nice person when your first impression was negative. And while I'm not sure I'd go with the Aura test so much, I do think that interviews are somewhat overrated, and in general, references and resumes are probably good enough to go with as a starting point. One of the interview questions that I have turned to asking in recent years that's always leads to at least a very interesting conversation is tell me something that's true that almost nobody agrees with you on. And it sort of tests for originality of thinking. To some extent, it tests for your courage in speaking up in a difficult interview context where it's always socially awkward to tell the interviewer something that the interviewer might not agree with.
Yeah, I love that question. I think one of the contrarian, the challenges sometimes is so rare that sometimes it takes people a bit to think about it, but I think it's an awesome question.
Generally, it's, so I was asked what my answer to that question was the other day, and of course I have many, but the answer to the question always should take the form of, most people believe X, but the truth is not X. And so one somewhat maybe slightly glib answer is, most people believe this is an easy, straightforward question, but I believe it's a very hard question. Because most people think originality is easy, and I think it's actually really hard. And when you find it, it's really valuable.
Yep, I agree with that. The other thing that you said that I would emphasize is, more or less now what I think of as interviews, I think interviews are simply a chemistry check on the background of references. That the references are by far and away the most dispositive information about, does someone really, are they capable of doing amazing things? And it's one of the reasons why, as an investor, I almost never meet with anyone that doesn't come to me through a reference, because it's so dispositive to, is this person actually going to be able to, run the slalom course, navigate the minefields and everything else in order to make it happen? And it's, someone could seem perfectly impressive within 30 to 60 minutes and still wouldn't have the right characteristics.
Do you think that the world's become more networked in this way, where, networked is sort of linked to using references as opposed to tracked achievements?
I think not only has it become more that way, I think it's becoming more that way at superlinear speed. Because I think that now, it used to be very difficult to get network information, a network image. Now, actually, we have all kinds of ways to try to get better information from the network about a person, a company, a transaction, that sort of thing. And I think that now becomes, one of the things, I don't think you went to TED, but one of the things I gave as a TED talk was that we now need to have a concept of network literacy as fundamental in terms of how do people succeed. It's kind of like as fundamental as a word of literacy, as search literacy may have been a decade ago.
That we're heading towards a much more transparent world. People are often nervous about it because I think privacy is being lost. On the other hand, it's a more open world, and so there's some good and bad things about it. One of the things that strikes me as very good about this increased transparency world is that I think there's certain types of bad actors that will find it much harder to get away with it. So you have sort of, a disturbingly large number of politicians and business leaders are sociopaths and psychopaths. The number is something like 30 to 50% are borderline really bad people. And I think you can get away with that in a world where you jump between places and people don't really know who you are, and where things are very transactional. In a world that's more networked and more transparent, I think that's going to be much harder. And I think our society will be dramatically better off when there are fewer people in leading positions who are sort of borderline sociopaths, borderline psychopaths. And where the Google slogan, "Don't be evil," actually works, versus what the historic slogan has been, which is do a little bit of evil and don't get caught. and I think we're moving away from that world.
Well, I think I agree entirely. And another way of putting how the networked world is better is not just the transparency and is not just the dynamics of how the reputation follows you, but it's a solution to the classic game theory prisoner's dilemma, right? Because the whole notion, this is, when you look at all the different simulations, the Axelrod, tit for tat, is all if there isn't any reputational information, then you do each transaction with no future impact in terms of how your community, how people treat you. But once that's traceable, once how you treat people, how you work, how you live becomes part of your network image, then all of a sudden you actually have an incentive to be good in each of these circumstances because you live with it for the years and the decades come. We're moving from an information age to a network age. And one of the key things was kind of prioritizing time, information, not just people for investments. And what I've been looking at is how do I essentially systematically, both with the current tools and the tools that are being in development, use the network to help me give signal from the noise in terms of like which emails to reply to or to pay attention to, how to deploy a network around me to respond to larger and larger volumes of email, which both of us have been getting over the last few years. And I tend to think that if we figure out kind of ways to deploy, not just our organization and staff, but the network around us, that all becomes much more efficient, not just on which people, but also which things to attend to. So most recently, when I was actually giving some advice to a startup that Greylock's invested in, as a young company, it's a Greylock Discovery Company, as opposed to trying to tell them which industries they should go after, I told them they should go ask the question on LinkedIn Answers, Quora, and other kinds of places as a way of deploying network intelligence in order to figure out this question, and then with me work through the solutions to that.
Well, I'm a little bit more pessimistic. I think that I think the problem of information overload is still very poorly solved, and so email represents a big improvement over previous modes of communication, but it's not as big as it might indicate because there are such great inefficiencies in managing that properly. And so I think one of the great challenges for the next decade ahead is really figuring out ways to make all these new information technologies work in ways that are efficient and scalable, and where you can really do a much better job sorting things out. So I think this is very far from a fully solved problem at this time.
I agree.